Have you ever felt like you're living a life that isn't really yours one morning? You wake up, look into the mirror, and realize the eyes staring back feel like a stranger's. You do what you're supposed to do. Say what you're expected to say. Smile at the right time. Stay silent in the right moments. As if you're just playing a character in a script you didn't write. The world didn't scream or force you into it. It only whispered. Quietly, but long enough. Long enough for you to start believing that the mask you wear is who you truly are. But then, in the quiet hours of the night, when no one else is around, a question echoes like a bell from your soul. Who am I? Really, Carl Jung believed that this confusion isn't a sign you're lost. It's a wake-up call. A call to rise from the deep sleep of borrowed identities. A call to step out of the scripts written by parents, teachers, and society, but never by you. If you've ever felt empty in the middle of doing what seems right, if you've ever been successful yet still felt unfulfilled, if you've ever wanted to scream while smiling, then this video didn't find you by accident. This is your call to return to yourself. The journey Carl Jung called individuation, the rebirth of the true self. And before we dive deeper, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because there are many more profound psychological and philosophical journeys ahead. Part 1. The Mask Called Me. From an early age, we were taught how to become the right person, to be polite, to be obedient, not to get angry, not to show too much, to become a version that could be loved, accepted, and never cause trouble. And just like that, little by little, we traded our inner truth for outer harmony. We weren't loved for who we really were. We were loved for the version of us that had been edited. We became actors in our own lives, and the mask we wear every day, Carl Jung called it the persona. Persona is the social face. It's the outer layer we put on to meet expectations. It helps us survive, function, and be accepted. And yes, it has value. Without it, surviving in this rule-based society would be nearly impossible. But there's a thin line between using a mask and becoming that mask. When you start tying your self-worth to the approval of others, when you can no longer tell the difference between your role and your soul, that's when you begin to lose touch with your authentic self. How many times have you said things that weren't true, just to be liked? How many times have you smiled on cue, even when deep down you wanted to scream? How many times have you pretended to be strong, while your inner world was silently falling apart? That's not your fault. That's the result of a society that praises cooperation, but shames raw honesty. But Carl Jung warned us, living too long inside the persona will leave you hollow. You may achieve everything others expected from you, but you'll lose everything your soul was quietly crying out for. We didn't come into this world to be replicas of society. We came here to become ourselves. And if you're brave enough to remove that mask, a new journey will begin. Not outward, but inward. But remember, the place where you've hidden your true self is also the place where you've buried your pain. And there, in the silence, something begins to stir. A darkness begins to form. We call it the shadow. And that will be the next chapter in this journey of discovering the self. Part 2. Shadow. When darkness becomes a cry for help. If the persona is the mask you wear for the world, then the shadow is what you hide in the dark. It's the anger you refuse to admit, the jealousy you pretend not to feel, the memories of abandonment, humiliation, and shame that you've buried deep in your mind. It's the voice that was once silenced by others. And over time, you learned to silence it yourself. But do you know what's most brutal? The shadow doesn't disappear. It only hides and keeps living in your unconscious mind. You think you've mastered it, but then one day, you snap at a stranger for no real reason. You feel deeply bitter when someone else succeeds. You destroy the relationship you love the most. And later sit alone wondering, why did I do that? That's not impulsiveness. That's the shadow speaking. Carl Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. We are not afraid of the dark. We're afraid of seeing ourselves in it. Maybe, as a child, you showed sensitivity and were labeled too weak. Maybe you asked questions and were told you were disrespectful. Maybe you dared to express anger and were judged as difficult. And with each of those moments, you shut down parts of yourself until you became a house with the lights on, but completely empty inside. Here's the strange paradox. Inside the shadow, in the very place you once rejected, lies the greatest power to return to your true self. There's creativity that was suppressed, individuality that was pushed down, the survival instincts that were forced to be well-behaved. You cannot become whole if you leave half your soul in the dark. Wholeness doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from embracing both the light and the darkness within you. And the question now is this: how do you face your shadow without being consumed by it? How do you bring darkness into the light without losing yourself? Carl Jung gave us a key, a deep and powerful idea called the self, the true self. It doesn't live in the mask, and it doesn't live in the shadow either. It is the reconciliation between both. In the next part, we'll explore this core concept together and uncover why no one can ever truly be free until they've found themselves. Part 3. The Self. The Journey Back to Wholeness. If the persona is the mask you wear to survive, and the shadow is the part of your soul you once rejected, then the self is the whole of who you are, not the best part, not the strongest part, but the harmony of everything you carry, the light and the darkness, the smile and the scar, the parts you're used to showing, and the parts you've hidden so deeply that even you forgot they existed. Carl Jung believed that the deepest purpose of life isn't success or perfection. It is wholeness. He called it the process of individuation, an inner journey where you dare to face the truth, strip away the false layers, and choose to live in alignment with your true nature. Even when it's hard, individuation doesn't happen in a single moment. It doesn't come from a self-help course. It isn't a state of enlightenment that money can buy. It is a lifelong path, a journey where each step requires the death of an illusion and the rebirth of a deeper truth. You will have to accept this. Not every belief you carry is actually yours. Not every decision you've made was what you truly wanted. You'll face the fear of abandonment, the fear of not being enough, and sometimes the fear that you are a stranger to yourself. Is it painful? Yes, but it's also freedom, because with every mask you take off, with every shadow you bring into the light, you move closer to a more authentic life. You start to understand why you keep repeating the same broken relationships, why the smallest things can make you angry, why success still feels lonely. None of it is random. It's the voice of the self calling you home. And as you begin to live in alignment with your true self, everything starts to shift. No more exhausting yourself trying to impress. No more living for other people's expectations. No more pleasing the world at the cost of your soul. You start living as someone fully present in your own life. Every decision, every word, every step comes from a deeper place where you're no longer performing. You're truly alive. But to reach that place, you must go deeper into the invisible forces that shape you every day. The archetypes, ancient psychological patterns rooted in the collective unconscious. That will be our next doorway, where you'll not only understand yourself, but also why the world moves the way it does, and why you no longer wish to follow the crowd. Part 4. Archetypes. The unconscious patterns that live inside you. The human mind is not a blank slate. We don't enter life with an empty head. We carry within us ancient blueprints, psychological patterns that existed long before we could speak. Carl Jung called them archetypes, primal forms buried deep within the collective unconscious. This isn't something you learn from a book. No one teaches you to fear the dark. No one shows you how to feel the power of a hero or feel moved by a story of sacrifice. These responses come from a place older than personal memory, a deeper layer of the soul Jung called the collective unconscious, a psychic inheritance shared by all of humanity. You've heard of the hero, the wise one, the rebel, the healer. They're not just fictional characters. They live inside you. Each archetype is a voice, a pull, a pattern of emotion, behavior, and belief that you keep replaying without realizing it. When you try to please everyone, put others' needs above your own, you're living as the caregiver. When you keep pushing, fighting, overcoming adversity, you're stepping into the pattern of the hero. When you question the rules, break the norms, and refuse to live like the crowd, the rebel in you is rising. But here's the problem. We often get stuck in just one archetype. We think we must always be strong, always help, always be wise. And in that constant must, we reject other parts of ourselves, the parts that are wild, soft, angry, or afraid. They don't vanish. They starve. And one day, they return as emotional storms you can't explain. Understanding your archetypes means understanding the quiet war happening inside you every single day. You're not just the hero. You're also the abandoned child, the ancient sage, the rule breaker. And you will never fully become yourself if you keep silencing those voices. Because only when you identify and integrate your archetypes do you truly take back the pen to write your own story instead of letting unconscious patterns write it for you. This is why some people spend their whole lives feeling empty, repeating mistakes, even when they have everything society calls success, because they've been living a pattern they never chose. In the next part, we'll get to the heart of it all. What happens when you reject the process of individuation? When you run from the darkness, cling to the mask, and live out a script written by someone else? The answer might forever change the way you understand your suffering. Part 5. The price of denying your true self. Here's the irony. We believe that if we avoid pain, we will find peace. We think that if we keep wearing the mask, keep living up to other people's expectations, keep silencing the uncomfortable parts of our soul, everything will somehow be fine. But Carl Jung was clear. When you deny your inner growth, you don't escape. You only delay the collapse, because everything you reject will eventually find a way back to you. It comes back as silent anxiety. You don't know why you feel restless, as sudden depression, even when life seems fine, as random bursts of anger, where you explode over something trivial, or as the same mistake, the same relationship, the same cycle of failure, repeating itself again and again, even after you swore things would be different. That's not fate. That's the cost of turning your back on yourself. You see, people who reject the process of individuation don't live more peacefully. They simply grow further and further away from who they truly are. They live according to inherited patterns, from parents, from society, from rules that were never questioned, and slowly, they begin to feel it. They exist, but they're not truly alive. You've probably seen people like this. The coworker who always smiles, but whose eyes are empty. The successful person with the house and the car, but who lies awake every night. The one who hides everything, but needs a few drinks just to speak their truth. They're not trapped by others. They're prisoners inside a cage built by their own hands. And over time, something worse than depression begins to grow. Bitterness. A person disconnected from their true self isn't just sad. They're angry, because deep within them, a soul is still screaming to live, but silenced for too long. That pain turns into resentment. Resentment toward a partner, toward parents, toward society, toward themselves. They become harsh, defensive, blaming, or they fall into hopeless silence, not knowing why they suffer so deeply. But the truth is, their suffering doesn't come from the outside. It comes from betraying themselves for far too long. And you know what's most heartbreaking? Many people live their entire lives like this, never asking, is this life mine? Or does it belong to someone else? They die without their true self ever being born. So if your life feels like it's slipping by without meaning, if you're exhausted from pretending, if you feel like a stranger to yourself, that is not shameful. It is a signal that your soul is still alive, that it is still waiting for you to return. And returning doesn't mean going backward. It means daring to walk inward, to the place you've abandoned for far too long. Carl Jung didn't offer easy escapes. He didn't promise magical healing methods. He simply laid out a clear choice: live as a false version of yourself, or take the difficult road home, the one that leads you back to who you really are. And believe it or not, that journey, though filled with darkness and uncertainty, is the only path that leads to real freedom. Conclusion: the journey back to yourself. Rediscovering your true self is not a destination. It's not a milestone where you declare, "I've made it." It's not a day you wake up, look in the mirror, and suddenly everything becomes clear. No, it is a journey, a quiet but profound journey, a long conversation between you and yourself every day. You will face choices to live by old patterns or to live truthfully with what you really feel, to put the mask back on, or to show up raw, vulnerable, but real. To cling to expectations, or let go and walk one step closer toward your authentic self. And no, it won't be easy, because the world doesn't like the truth. The world prefers what's edited. It values stability, compliance, and people who play their roles well, but your soul does not. Your soul doesn't need you to perform. It doesn't demand perfection. It only needs your honesty. Honesty about what you long for. Honesty about what you've denied. And the courage to live as if this life is truly yours. Not someone else's script. Carl Jung didn't teach us how to avoid the darkness. He taught us how to walk into the dark without losing the light inside us. He didn't say, you need to become someone great. He simply reminded you that you have always been enough. If only you have the courage to return to yourself. And when you do, everything begins to change. Not the world, but the way you show up in it. You stop getting pulled by outside noise. You stop repeating the same tragedies. You stop pretending you're fine when you're falling apart inside. You begin to live with all of your light and all of your shadow, not to be accepted, but because you have already accepted yourself. And that is true freedom. So if today you find yourself at a crossroads, if you feel lost, if you're searching for something deeper, more real, don't turn back. This journey is for you, not to become someone else, but to finally come home to yourself. If you saw yourself in any part of what was shared today, leave a comment below. I want to know. What part of this message awakened something in you? And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, because the journey of self-discovery is just getting started.